The Billionaire's heart surgeon. A broken man's reckoning. The scalpel glided with millimeter precision between the coronary arteries. Dr. Alexander Vance held his breath, separating the scarred tissue threatening his patient's life. The cardiac monitor beeped steadily in the operating room of St. Jude's Hospital in London. "Blood pressure stable, Dr. Vance," the scrub nurse announced. Alexander felt it, without looking away from the exposed heart. His hands moved with the dexterity of someone who had performed this operation hundreds of times. The triple coronary bypass required absolute concentration, but for him, it was routine. Nothing disturbed him in the operating room. Nothing had disturbed him in the last 3 years. "We'll proceed with the anastomosis," he instructed his resident. "Observe the suturing technique. One mistake here, and we lose the patient." The young doctor approached, nervous. Alexander had trained dozens of residents, but none got used to his coldness. He didn't shout like other surgeons. He didn't lose his temper. He simply operated with the precision of a machine. "Doctor, Mr. Davies is asking if he can speak with you after the surgery," the coordinator murmured from the operating room door. "Tell him my assistant will give him the report. I don't speak with family members." The coordinator hesitated. "He insists, doctor. He says he needs to hear it from you." Alexander looked up for the first time in 2 hours. His gray eyes hardened. "My job is to operate, not to console. Let him speak with the resident." Silence spread through the operating room. Everyone knew Dr. Vance's reputation. Brilliant, relentless, successful. They also knew that since his wife's accident, something had broken in him, something that was never repaired. The final suture was perfect. Alexander removed his gloves and left the operating room without looking back. In the hallway, his cell phone vibrated. Text message. He ignored the first call, then the second. At the third ring, he answered. "Hello, Dr. Vance. This is Principal Hayes from Northwood Academy. I need to see you urgently. It's about Sophia." Alexander stopped dead in his tracks. His 8-year-old daughter was the only thing left of his previous life, the only thing that mattered. "What happened?" "I prefer to speak in person. Can you come now?" "I'm on my way." The drive from Kensington to the school felt eternal. Alexander drove his Mercedes through the evening traffic. Images of the operating room mingled with memories he preferred to keep buried. Amelia laughing in the passenger seat, their hands intertwined as they waited at a traffic light. The rain hitting the windshield that October night. The truck that ran the red light. The sound of twisting metal. The silence afterward. Alexander gripped the steering wheel. 3 years, and he could still hear that silence. Principal Hayes was waiting for him in her office, a 50-year-old woman with a worried expression. Behind her, Sophia's drawings hung on a corkboard. Alexander recognized the dark strokes, the faceless figures. "Dr. Vance, thank you for coming. Please, sit down." "What did Sophia do?" "She didn't do anything wrong. That's the problem. Sophia doesn't do anything. She doesn't talk to her classmates. She doesn't participate in class. She doesn't play at recess. Yesterday she remained motionless during the earthquake drill. The teachers had to carry her." Alexander frowned. At home, Sophia spoke little. But she spoke. She ate, watched television, did her homework. She seemed normal. "Also," the principal continued, "her drawings worry us. Look at this." She showed him a sheet full of black scribbles. In the center, a small figure surrounded by shadows. "What does it mean?" "We don't know. That's why we need Sophia to see a specialist, a child psychologist." Alexander tensed. Psychologists asked questions. They stirred up things that were better left alone. "Sophia's fine. She just needs time." The principal sighed. She had dealt with denying parents before, but never with someone as stubborn as Alexander Vance. Doctor, with all due respect, it's been 3 years since the accident. Sophia was 5 years old when she lost her mother. She hasn't processed her grief correctly. Grief processes itself. It doesn't need external help. Doctor, if Sophia doesn't receive professional help, we'll have to consider other options. Her academic performance has dropped drastically. The other children avoid her. Yesterday she wet herself in class and didn't tell the teacher. Alexander felt as if he had been punched. Sophia had never had bladder control problems. I need a list of specialists, he murmured. I already have it prepared. They are all excellent professionals. I especially recommend Dr. Green. She works with traumatized children and has very good references. Alexander took the list without looking at it. His pride was slowly crumbling. He had saved hundreds of hearts, but he couldn't save his own daughters. Is there anything else? Yes. Sophia constantly asks about her mother. She says she sees her in dreams and is afraid to go to sleep. The teachers have noticed that she falls asleep in class because she doesn't sleep at night. Alexander closed his eyes. He also saw Amelia in dreams. He was also afraid to go to sleep. I'll talk to Sophia tonight. Dr. Vance, your daughter needs professional help. You cannot do this alone. The words echoed in his head as he drove back to Kensington. You cannot do this alone. He had built his entire life around the idea that he could, that he didn't need anyone, that hard work and discipline were enough. But Sophia was falling apart, and he didn't know how to stop it. He arrived at his residence as the sun set behind the skyscrapers. The house was silent. Too silent. He found Sophia in her room, sitting on the floor with her dolls. She wasn't playing with them. She was just staring at them. Hello, Princess. Sophia looked up. Her eyes, identical to Amelia's, pierced him. Hello, Daddy. Did you save hearts today? Yes, I saved a heart today. Why can't you save mine? The question hit him like a misplaced scalpel. Alexander knelt beside his daughter, not knowing how to respond. For the first time in 3 years, the coldest surgeon in London had no control over the situation. And for the first time in 3 years, Alexander Vance admitted he needed help. What do you think is the biggest barrier Alexander faces in accepting help for himself and Sophia? Share your thoughts below. The unconventional therapist and a father's stubbornness. Dr. Elena Hayes reviewed the file of her last patient of the day while listening to the familiar sounds of the East London neighborhood. Street vendors hawked their goods, children played soccer in the street, and the aroma of curry wafted through the open window of the community clinic. Her cell phone vibrated. Message from her mother. My dear, I'm out of my diabetes pills. Can you pick them up? Elena sighed. The pills cost £80, and she barely had $300 in her wallet. She would have to accept another private case, even if it meant working weekends. Dr. Hayes, there's a gentleman who wants to see you, announced Lucy, the receptionist. He says he comes recommended by Northwood Academy. Elena frowned. Referrals from private schools usually meant desperate parents, problematic children, and a lot of money. She didn't like mixing her community work with private cases, but she needed the extra income. Let him in. Alexander Vance entered the small office, and Elena immediately knew what kind of man he was. Italian suit, shoes that cost more than her monthly salary, haughty demeanor. Behind him, a small girl hid, clutching his hand. Dr. Vance, nice to meet you. I'm Elena Green. Alexander observed the office with disguised disdain. The walls needed painting, the furniture was second-hand, and the air conditioning made a strange noise. Nothing like the private clinics in Chelsea, where he had sought help before. Elena knelt down to the girl's height. Sophia had huge, sad eyes, perfectly combed hair, and an impeccable school uniform. But there was something broken in her gaze. Hello, sweetheart. What's your name? Sophia didn't answer. She clung tighter to her father's leg. Her name is Sophia. She's 8 years old, and she presents with selective mutism, episodes of anxiety and sleep problems. Elena looked up at Alexander. His tone was clinical, cold, as if he were describing symptoms in a medical meeting. Are you a doctor too? Cardiovascular surgeon, St. Jude's Hospital. Of course. Elena had treated doctors' children before, parents who believed they could diagnose their own children, who saw therapy as a personal failure. Well, Dr. Thorne, before we continue, I need to clarify a few things. If I accept Sophia's case, I set the rules. No interference, no homemade diagnoses, no pressure to speed up the process. Alexander tensed. He wasn't used to being spoken to like that, especially by a psychologist from a neighborhood clinic. My fees are £50 per session. Appointments are once a week, same day, same time. If you miss without notice, the full session is charged. £50 was ridiculously cheap for someone of his economic level, but Elena had her principles. She wasn't going to charge more just because he could afford it. When can we start? Right now, if you like. Sophia, do you want to see my office? The girl looked at her father, who nodded. Elena led her to a corner where she had toys, books, and art supplies. Alexander sat in an uncomfortable chair, clearly out of place. Look, Sophia, I have many fun games. Do you like to draw? Sophia nodded slightly. Elena gave her paper and crayons, observing how the girl chose only dark colors. Do you know how to play bingo? Sophia's eyes lit up for the first time. Elena took out a traditional British bingo game, with colorful cards and boards. All right, I'll be the caller. The heart! Elena shouted dramatically, imitating fairground callers. Sophia smiled. A small smile, but real. Can you call the cards, Sophia? The girl shook her head. I'll teach you. This is the moon. How do you think we call it? Sophia whispered something inaudible. I didn't hear you, sweetie. Can you speak a little louder? The moon, Sophia murmured. Perfect. But callers put more emotion into it. The moon? The one that left at night and didn't return by day. Sophia repeated the phrase, this time with more confidence. Alexander watched from his chair, surprised. It had been months since he had heard his daughter's voice so clearly. Elena continued the game, blending playful therapy with cultural elements that resonated with the child. She used stories to talk about sadness, stories to discuss transformation and change. You know what, Sophia? I think you and I are going to be very good friends. For the first time in the session, Sophia spoke clearly. I like Dr. Elena. Alexander sat up in his chair. Sophia had spoken in English, not the formal English he insisted on using at home. There was something in those words, in the natural way they flowed, that disturbed him. Elena felt the father's immediate tension. She had seen that reaction before in affluent families who preferred to maintain distance from their cultural roots. Sophia, would you like to come see me next week? Yes, perfect. We'll play more games and talk about nice things. Alexander stood up, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the session. Can we talk alone? Elena nodded and asked Lucy to watch Sophia in the waiting room. Dr. Vance, is there a problem? I prefer the sessions to be conducted in English. Sophia studies in a bilingual school, and it's important to maintain the language. Elena looked at him intently. She had dealt with cases like this before. Parents who denied their cultural identity, who believed that speaking English was synonymous with poverty or lack of education. Doctor, Sophia expressed herself better in English in half an hour than probably in months. I'm not going to limit her communication due to linguistic prejudices. They're not prejudices, it's preparation for her future. Her future includes being a British child living in Britain. Denying her native language is denying her part of her identity. Alexander clenched his fists. This woman understood nothing about his world, about the expectations he had for Sophia. Look, Dr. Hayes, I pay for this service. I expect my instructions to be respected. Elena crossed her arms. Despite her financial need, she was not going to compromise her professional ethics. Dr. Vance, if you don't trust my methods, you're free to seek help elsewhere. There are many psychologists in Chelsea who will be happy to follow your instructions to the letter. Alexander hesitated. He had visited 3 private clinics before coming here. In all of them, Sophia had refused to participate. This was the first time he had seen her genuinely interact with a therapist. How long will the treatment take? I don't know. Every child is different. Sophia has suffered significant trauma and needs time to process it. What kind of trauma? Elena studied him carefully. There was something in the way he avoided her gaze, in the stiffness of his shoulders. That's something Sophia will tell me when she's ready. Meanwhile, I need you to also be willing to participate in the process. Me? I'm not the patient. Doctor, children do not exist in a vacuum. If Sophia has emotional problems, there are usually family factors involved. Alexander walked towards the door. This conversation had gone too far. I just need you to fix my daughter, nothing else. Elena followed him to the waiting room, where Sophia was playing with wooden blocks. Sophia, I'll see you next week, okay? The girl ran to her and hugged her, a spontaneous hug, warm, full of trust. Thanks, Dr. Elena. Alexander observed the exchange with a mixture of relief and uneasiness. Sophia hadn't hugged anyone since Amelia's funeral, but there was something in the ease with which she connected with this woman that deeply disturbed him. As they drove away in the Mercedes, Sophia broke the silence. Daddy, why don't you talk to me in English like Dr. Elena? Alexander didn't reply. In the rearview mirror, he saw the clinic disappear among the rundown buildings of the East London neighborhood. 2 completely different worlds had collided that afternoon, and he wasn't sure he was ready for the consequences. What do you think is the true reason Alexander resists Sophia speaking English? And what do you think of Elena's direct approach? Share your thoughts below. Walls crumble. Vulnerability and connection. 6 weeks after the first session, Alexander arrived early at Elena's clinic. Sophia had started talking more at home, even laughing while watching cartoons the night before. For the first time in 3 years, Alexander felt something akin to hope. Elena came out of her office accompanying another patient, a child from the neighborhood who clearly couldn't afford her services. Alexander watched her say goodbye to the little one with the same warmth she showed Sophia, regardless of economic differences. Dr. Vance, you're early today. I wanted to talk to you about Sophia's progress. Elena checked her watch. She had 15 minutes before her next appointment. Of course, but make it quick. Sophia, do you want to draw while I talk to your dad? The girl nodded and went to her favorite corner. In recent weeks, she had started using brighter colors in her drawings, yellows, reds, blues, which she had previously avoided completely. Dr. Hayes, I've noticed significant changes in Sophia. She talks more, sleeps better, even asked if she could invite a friend from school. Elena smiled. She had worked hard to get to this point with the child. Sophia is processing her grief in a healthy way. We've talked a lot about her mother, about how she feels when she misses her. What exactly does she tell you? Elena hesitated. Some of Sophia's revelations had been disturbing. She tells me she misses when her mom hugged her before bed, that she liked it when they cooked together. She also told me that after the accident, you changed a lot. Alexander tensed. He didn't like being the subject of conversation in sessions. What else has she told you? That before the accident you smiled more, that you played together, that you read her stories in English. Sophia remembers when you were more affectionate with her. The words hit Alexander like a terminal diagnosis. He had been so focused on protecting himself from pain that he had forgotten to protect his daughter from his own coldness. "Doctor, I'd like to invite you to dinner to discuss Sophia's treatment in more detail. I know an excellent restaurant in Chelsea." Elena looked at him, surprised. In 6 weeks, Alexander had maintained a strict professional distance. "It's not necessary, doctor. We can talk here at the clinic." "I insist. It's important that we have a deeper conversation about Sophia's progress." Elena considered the proposal. She needed to talk to Alexander about some aspects of the treatment that required his active participation. "All right, but I prefer something simpler. There's a really good Indian restaurant nearby. The food is delicious, and we can talk quietly." Alexander frowned. An Indian restaurant wasn't exactly what he had in mind. "Don't you prefer something more formal?" "Doctor, the food doesn't change the quality of our conversation. Besides, Mrs. Kapoor's curries are the best in the neighborhood." That afternoon, Alexander found himself sitting at a plastic table, eating curry, while Elena explained the therapeutic techniques she was using with Sophia. The place was full of construction workers, students, and families from the neighborhood. "Do you always eat here?" Alexander asked, observing the atmosphere. "Almost every day. Mrs. Kapoor gives me credit when I'm short on cash, and her green chutney is addictive." Alexander couldn't remember the last time he had eaten in a place like this. Since the accident, his social life had been limited to work dinners in expensive restaurants, where no one talked about feelings. "Doctor, I wanted to ask you about the next phase of the treatment." Elena took a sip of her mango lassi. "I think it's time to include you more actively in the sessions. Sophia needs to rebuild her relationship with you. What exactly does that mean?" "It means you'll have to be willing to be vulnerable in front of your daughter, to talk about your own feelings about the loss of your wife." Alexander stopped chewing. That conversation had taken a turn he didn't expect. "I don't think it's appropriate to involve Sophia in my emotional processes." "Doctor, Sophia is already involved. Children absorb their parents' emotions like sponges. Your unprocessed pain has become her pain." The following week, Alexander reluctantly agreed to participate in a family session. Elena had prepared activities designed to facilitate communication between father and daughter. "Sophia, can you tell your dad how you feel when he comes home late from work? I feel lonely, like he doesn't care about being with me." Alexander felt a pang in his chest. He had been deliberately coming home late to avoid the difficult hours before bedtime. "Daddy, why don't you smile like you used to?" Sophia asked with the brutal honesty of children. The question broke something inside Alexander. 3 years of emotional containment crumbled in an instant. "Because I miss your mommy so much, princess. And I didn't know how to be sad and be your daddy at the same time." Tears began to roll down Alexander's cheeks. Elena watched in silence as Alexander finally allowed himself to feel in front of his daughter. "You cry for mommy too?" "Every day, Sophia. Every day." Sophia approached her father and hugged him. Alexander held her like he hadn't since Amelia's funeral. Elena felt her own eyes moisten. These were the moments that made her work worthwhile. 2 weeks later, Elena suggested a therapeutic activity outside the clinic. She believed it would be beneficial for them to pass time together in a relaxed environment. "How about going to the London Eye?" Alexander had never taken Sophia to the famous landmark. He thought it was too touristy, too chaotic. But Elena insisted that the cultural experience would be positive for both of them. On Saturday morning, the 3 of them boarded a capsule decorated with twinkling lights. Alexander felt out of place among the tourists and street performers, but Sophia was fascinated. "Daddy, look at Big Ben," she cried, pointing to the clock tower. Elena had brought educational material about London's history. As they ascended, she told Sophia stories about the city and its cultural significance. Alexander watched how Elena naturally interacted with his daughter, how she managed to combine fun and learning without apparent effort. There was something about her way of being that calmed him. "Doctor, would you like to take a turn on the camera?" Elena asked. "I don't know if that's a good idea." "Come on, Daddy, you can do it," Sophia encouraged him. Alexander awkwardly took the camera. It had been years since he had done something so simple, so disconnected from his professional world. The sun began to set as they returned to the ground. Sophia had fallen asleep on Elena's lap, exhausted by the adventure. "Thank you," Alexander murmured, "for everything you've done for Sophia." Elena caressed the sleeping girl's hair. "Sophia is an extraordinary child. She just needed someone to truly listen to her. You are extraordinary too." Elena looked up, surprised by the intensity in Alexander's voice. There was something different in his eyes, a warmth she hadn't seen before. "Doctor." "Alexander." "What?" "Call me Alexander." The moment stretched between them as the capsule gently swayed. Alexander leaned towards Elena, and she didn't pull away. Their lips met in a soft, tentative kiss, full of emotions neither had expected to feel. When they separated, Elena's cheeks were flushed. "This complicates things. I know. It shouldn't have happened, but it did." What do you think will be the biggest challenge for Alexander and Elena as their relationship develops? Will Alexander confront his fears, or will he retreat? Tell us in the comments. Love's test. Fear versus connection. The following Monday, Alexander arrived at the clinic with a worried expression. Elena greeted him professionally, but there was a new tension between them. "Doctor, I need to ask you something. Is it true that you rejected a job offer in Manchester?" Elena was surprised. How had he known that? Who told him? Principal Hayes mentioned that several psychologists had applied for that position. "She told me you were the most qualified candidate." Elena sighed. The offer had been tempting. Better salary? Better conditions? Opportunity for professional growth? "Yes, I rejected it." "Why?" "My mom is sick. I can't leave her alone." Alexander studied her carefully. Elena had sacrificed her professional growth to care for her family, something he had never considered doing. "How much were they offering you?" "It's not important." "It is to me." Elena mentioned the figure. It was 3 times what she earned at the community clinic. Alexander fell silent. This woman had rejected the opportunity of a lifetime out of family loyalty, while he had used work as an escape from his emotional responsibilities. For the first time in years, Alexander Vance questioned whether he truly knew what it meant to have correct priorities. The next 3 weeks passed in a careful dance between Alexander and Elena. After the kiss on the London Eye, both had agreed to keep their relationship a secret until they better understood what was happening between them. The sessions with Sophia continued normally, but there was a new electricity in the air every time their gazes crossed. Alexander began arriving earlier for appointments, inventing excuses to stay after Sophia finished her session. Elena, for her part, found herself looking forward to those stolen moments with an anxiety she hadn't felt in years. One afternoon, after Sophia stayed playing with Lucy at the reception, Alexander finally dared to ask the question that had been tormenting him. "Elena, would you like to have dinner with me tonight? Without Sophia. Without talking about therapy. Just us." Elena felt butterflies in her stomach. She had been waiting for that invitation, but she also feared it. "I don't know if that's a good idea, Alexander. I'm your daughter's therapist." "I know, but you're also the woman I can't stop thinking about." That night, Alexander arrived at Elena's small apartment in East London. It was the first time he had visited her home, and the contrast with his Kensington residence couldn't be greater. The apartment was tiny but cozy, full of plants, books, and family photographs. Elena's mother, Mrs. Kapoor, was watching television in the living room. A 60-year-old woman, thin from diabetes, but with lively eyes that immediately evaluated Alexander from head to toe. "Mom, this is Alexander, the dad of one of my patients." "Nice to meet you, ma'am." Mrs. Kapoor shook his hand firmly. "So, you're the rich doctor my daughter talks so much about." Elena blushed. "Mom, I don't say that." "You don't have to say it, my dear. It shows on your face when you talk about him." Alexander felt strangely comfortable with the woman's direct honesty. In his world, no one spoke so openly about feelings. Elena prepared vegetable curries in the small kitchen, while Alexander observed the photographs in the living room. There were pictures of Elena graduating from university, family vacations in the Lake District, simple but joyful Christmas celebrations. "Your dad?" he asked, pointing to a photo of Elena as a child with a man in overalls. "He left when I was 12. Mom raised us alone, working as a seamstress." Alexander thought of his own privileged childhood, the opportunities he had, effortlessly. Elena had fought for every achievement in her life. They ate dinner at the small kitchen table, talking about everything except Sophia. Alexander discovered that Elena had studied on scholarship, that she worked part-time while attending university, that she had rejected job offers abroad to care for her mother. "Have you never regretted it?" Alexander asked. "Staying, not looking for better opportunities." Elena looked him directly in the eyes. "Family is the most important thing, Alexander. Money comes and goes, but the people you love are irreplaceable." Her words resonated deeply in Alexander. After dinner, they sat on the small sofa while Mrs. Kapoor had retired to her room. The intimacy of the moment was palpable. "Elena, You don't have to say anything." Alexander kissed her, this time with more intensity than on the London Eye. Elena responded, and for a moment both allowed themselves to forget the complications of their situation. But even as he held her, Alexander felt the familiar terror growing in his chest. The last time he had loved someone like this, he had lost her in the most brutal way possible. The ultimate choice, love or fear. The following weeks, Alexander struggled between the happiness he felt with Elena and the paralyzing fear that woke him up in the early hours of the morning. He started having nightmares where Elena died in accidents similar to Amelia's. He would wake up sweating, heart pounding, convinced that loving again was an invitation to disaster. One morning, Elena arrived at the clinic with red eyes and a worried expression. Alexander immediately knew something was wrong. "What happened?" "My mom had a diabetic crisis last night. We had to take her to the hospital. Is she okay?" "For now, yes, but the doctor says she needs more specialized care. My sister, Sarah, lives in Manchester and is a nurse. She thinks Mom would be better there." Alexander felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. "Are you going to leave?" "I don't know. Sarah says she can get me a job at the hospital where she works. The salary would be much better, and Mom would have better medical care." The idea of losing Elena terrified him more than any complex surgery he had performed. "When do you have to decide?" "In 2 weeks. That afternoon, during the session with Sophia, the girl was particularly communicative. She had drawn a family. A man, a woman, and a girl holding hands. "Who are they, Sophia?" Elena asked. "It's the 3 of us. You, Daddy, and me." Alexander immediately tensed. "Sophia, Dr. Elena is your therapist." "No. Why can't she be my new mommy?" Sophia interrupted with the simple logic of children. "She loves me. I love her. And you love her too. I see it in your eyes." Elena looked at Alexander, who had completely paled. "Sophia, adult relationships are complicated." "They're not complicated," the girl insisted. Mommy Amelia is in heaven, but Dr. Elena is here. She can be my mommy on earth." Alexander abruptly stood up. "Sophia, let's go. The session is over." "But Daddy, we're leaving, now." That night, Alexander couldn't sleep. Sophia's words echoed in his head. His daughter had verbalized exactly what he had been feeling, but hadn't dared to admit. He wanted Elena to be part of his family, but the idea terrified him. The next day, he arrived at the clinic with a decision made. Elena greeted him with a smile, but Alexander maintained his cold, professional expression. "Dr. Hayes, I've been thinking, and I believe it's time to find a new therapist for Sophia." Elena looked at him, confused. "Why? Sophia has made so much progress." "Exactly. She no longer needs intensive therapy. Also, I believe our personal situation has compromised your professional objectivity." Elena felt as if she had been slapped. "Our personal situation. What happened between us was a mistake. I was vulnerable because of Sophia's progress, and you took advantage of that vulnerability." The words came out of Alexander's mouth like poison, designed to hurt and create distance. "Alexander, what are you saying?" "I'm saying this is over. Everything. I'll find another therapist for Sophia, and we won't see each other again." Elena was silent for a moment, processing the deliberate cruelty of his words. "I understand. If that's your decision, I respect it." Alexander expected shouts, tears, pleas. Elena's quiet dignity completely disarmed him. "Is that all? What else do you want me to say, Dr. Thorne? You've made your position very clear." Alexander walked towards the door, but stopped without turning. "Elena, No, you've said enough." Alexander left the clinic knowing he had just made the biggest mistake of his life, but fear was stronger than love, and he had chosen the security of his loneliness over the risk of being happy again. In his car, as he drove away from the East London neighborhood, Alexander allowed himself to cry for the second time in 3 years. This time, he wasn't just crying for what he had lost, but for what he had deliberately destroyed with his own hands. What do you think of Alexander's decision? Was it understandable fear or a cowardly retreat? Share your thoughts in the comments. Redemption's path and a shared hope. 2 weeks after the breakup, Sophia had returned to silence. Alexander found her every morning sitting on her bed, staring out the window without saying a word. The progress of months of therapy vanished like smoke. The nightmares returned. Selective mutism came back stronger, and the girl refused to eat. Alexander tried to find another therapist. He visited 3 private clinics in Chelsea, but Sophia refused to participate in the sessions. She remained motionless in the chairs, her gaze lost, as if she had built an invisible wall around herself. At the hospital, Alexander immersed himself in work with desperation. He accepted emergency surgeries, complex cases that other surgeons rejected, operations that lasted 12 consecutive hours. Anything not to think about Elena, not to remember the warmth of her smile, or the way Sophia had blossomed under her care. "Dr. Thorne, you have a surgery scheduled in 20 minutes, his assistant reminded him. Alexander looked up from the files he had been obsessively reviewing. He had slept 3 hours in the last 2 days. "What surgery?" "Quadruple bypass. The patient is a 50-year-old man, father of 3 children. Alexander nodded mechanically. Another heart to repair, another life to save. Cruel irony for someone who had deliberately destroyed his own opportunity for happiness. In the operating room, Alexander began the operation with his usual precision, but as the surgery progressed, his hands began to tremble slightly. Lack of sleep and emotional stress were taking their toll. "Doctor, are you okay?" his resident asked, noticing the unusual hesitation. "I'm fine. Continue with the retraction." But Alexander was not well. As he observed the patient's exposed heart, he realized the brutal irony of his situation. He spent his days repairing physical hearts while his own bled slowly. The operation ended successfully, but Alexander left the operating room staggering. In the hallway, he met Dr. Robert Smith, his closest colleague, and one of the few who dared to confront him. "Alexander, you look terrible. When was the last time you slept?" "I'm fine, Robert." "No, you're not fine. And neither is your daughter. I saw her in the pediatrics area yesterday. She looks like a ghost." Alexander stopped. He didn't know Sophia had been in the hospital. What was she doing here? They brought her from school. She had a panic episode during recess. She remained catatonic for 2 hours. The words hit Alexander like a misplaced scalpel. His daughter was suffering, and he had been too cowardly to admit he needed help. "Alexander, what happened to the psychologist who was treating Sophia? The girl had improved so much." "There were professional complications." Robert looked at him with a skeptical expression. "Professional complications? Or did you fall in love with her and run away like you always do when things get serious?" Alexander didn't answer, but his silence was answer enough. "Brother, you've been running from pain for 3 years. First you hid in work after losing Amelia. Now you're hiding from love. When are you going to stop operating on yourself without anesthesia?" That night, Alexander went home and found Sophia drawing in her room. He approached to see her work. Black figures, rain, a lonely girl in the middle of darkness. "Sophia, do you want to have dinner with me?" The girl didn't respond. Alexander sat on the floor next to her. "Princess, I know you miss Dr. Elena." Sophia looked up for the first time in days. Her eyes were filled with unshed tears. "Why did she leave, Daddy? Was it my fault?" Alexander felt as if his heart had been ripped out. "No, my love. It wasn't your fault. It was mine. Can you bring her back?" "I don't know, Sophia. I don't know." The next day, Alexander accidentally learned that Elena was moving to Manchester that weekend. Lucy, the clinic's receptionist, had called to cancel other patients' appointments. Alexander spent the day in a state of growing agitation. Elena would leave, and he would have forever lost the opportunity to fix things. But fear was still stronger than love. What if he lost her like he had lost Amelia? What if destiny was cruel enough to take away another loved one? On Friday afternoon, Alexander arrived home and didn't find Sophia. He searched for her throughout the residence. He asked the security staff. He called the school. No one had seen her. Finally, a hunch led him to get in his car and drive towards the East London neighborhood. If Sophia had gone anywhere, it would be to find Elena. He arrived at the clinic just as the sun was setting. He found it closed, but heard voices inside. He knocked desperately until Lucy opened the door. "Dr. Vance, what a surprise. Is Sophia here?" "Yes, she's with Dr. Elena. She arrived an hour ago crying, saying she had run away to say goodbye." Alexander rushed into the clinic. He found Elena hugging Sophia on the waiting room sofa. His daughter was sobbing inconsolably. "Daddy!" Sophia cried upon seeing him. "Dr. Elena is leaving, and you're sad again, like when Mommy died." Alexander knelt in front of his daughter, but his eyes sought Elena's. "Elena, You don't have to explain anything, Alexander. Sophia told me you changed therapists. I respect your decision. It wasn't a professional decision. It was cowardice." Elena looked at him, surprised. Alexander had never admitted vulnerability so openly. "I'm scared, Elena. Scared to love you and lose you. Scared that Sophia will get attached to you, and then you'll have to leave. Scared to be happy again, because the last time I was happy, I lost everything." Tears began to roll down Alexander's cheeks. "But I'm more scared of living without you, of Sophia growing up thinking that love is something to run from." Elena approached him, with Sophia still in her arms. "Alexander, I'm not leaving either. What? I rejected the Manchester offer. I arranged for my mom to be transferred to the general hospital here in the city. The treatment will be just as good, and I can stay. Why? Because my life is here, my work, my patients, and you two. Alexander slowly stood up. Lucy had discreetly left, leaving them alone in the clinic. Elena, I love you. I love your strength, your compassion, the way you make Sophia feel safe. I love how you make me feel alive again. I love you too, Alexander, but I need to know that you won't run away again when things get difficult. I won't run, I promise you. Sophia looked at them both with hopeful eyes. Does that mean Dr. Elena can be my mommy on Earth? Alexander and Elena looked at each other and smiled. If she wants to, yes. Elena hugged Sophia and extended her arm to include Alexander. Yes, I do. I love both of you. This is such a beautiful moment of breakthrough. What do you think will be the biggest challenge for Alexander, Elena, and Sophia as they navigate this new family dynamic? Share your thoughts below. A family forged in love. 6 months later, life had found a new balance. Alexander had reduced his work hours to spend more time with his family. Elena continued at the community clinic, but now she had better equipment and more resources thanks to Alexander's discreet support. Sophia flourished in her new reality. She spoke openly about her two mothers, the one in heaven and the one on earth. Her drawings were now full of bright colors and smiling figures. On All Saints' Day, the three of them visited the cemetery where Amelia rested. Sophia placed marigolds on the grave while talking naturally about her mommy in heaven. Mommy Amelia, this is Elena. She takes care of Daddy and me. I think you'd like her. Alexander and Elena held hands as they watched Sophia. Love had not replaced the pain of the past, but it had transformed it into something beautiful and healing. Thank you, Alexander murmured. Why? For teaching me that the heart can break and keep beating, that it can love again without betraying previous love. Elena squeezed his hand. True love doesn't end, Alexander. It just multiplies. As they walked back to the car, Sophia ran ahead, laughing and chasing butterflies. Alexander and Elena followed her, holding hands, knowing they had found something they thought was lost forever. A family built on the foundations of love, patience, and the courage to believe in happiness again. The surgeon's heart had finally learned that life wasn't about avoiding pain, but about finding the love that makes it worth risking feeling again. A new legacy, healing, and purpose. 1 year after the wedding, the NICU was bustling with activity. 3 new incubators had arrived that morning, and Elena supervised their installation, while Leo played in his portable playpen in Michelle's office. Mommy! Leo cried when he saw Elena enter. One moment, my love, she replied, signing the last documents. Matthew appeared at the door with a small package wrapped in gift paper. Am I late? He asked. Just in time, Michelle replied. It's his first year at the hospital. Leo crawled excitedly towards his godfather, who picked him up with an ease that only practice gives. I can't believe he's already 1 year old, Elena commented, putting away the papers. Time flies, Michelle said, like the hospital project. Did you know we already have a waiting list for transfers? That's why I came, Matthew added. The board approved the expansion. We're going to build another floor. Elena smiled. With the same design? With some improvements. The staff's suggestions were very useful. Leo began to fidget, eager to open his gift. Open it, Matthew said, sitting him on the desk. Inside was a small toy stethoscope. Leo's eyes lit up. Like Mommy's, Matthew explained. And like the one his godfather used to listen to the ancient wall during construction, Michelle added with a smile. Elena took the stethoscope and gently placed it in Leo's ears, "So you can hear the hospital's heartbeats," she said. "The old and the new." Leo laughed, pressing the instrument against the desk, against the walls, against his mother's heart. Outside, the afternoon sun bathed the ancient wall, now completely integrated into the modern building, like a scar that had become part of history, a reminder that some things need to break to become stronger. And in that office, surrounded by people who had learned that love has many forms, Leo continued to listen, discovering the heartbeats of his own story, a story that was just beginning. This is such a profoundly moving story about finding family in unexpected places and healing old wounds. If you were touched by Matthew and Elena's journey, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs a dose of hope. And for more incredible tales of transformation, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell.